Hello, Eureka Whiskey Club members. Trevor coming to you live on this wonderful Wednesday at the end of June. Thank you for joining our virtual tasting. It's always great to do these every month and to get to hear from our members and get to talk to some great industry leaders. Tonight, we're going to be talking all things Ross and Squibb, specifically Remus. Hopefully, everyone was able to grab their Eureka Whiskey Club Distiller's Vault 11-year bourbon that we'll be tasting tonight. This is a micro blend, a small batch that was selected specifically by me for the club, as always. So not a single barrel like sometimes we do, but if you've been in the club a while, you'll know that we also do kind of like small batches that were curated specifically for us. So we're excited to dive into all things Whiskey Club. We've gotten a lot of good feedback on this barrel. I hear from members every month that really like the picks, and it's always great to hear from you. So feel free to reach out. You can follow me on Instagram under Trevor Loves Beer, and it's always great to hear from our members and to hear the feedback on the barrels. But a lot of good feedback on this barrel this month. This pick this month, this micro blend. So that was really exciting to hear from a lot of you that you really enjoyed this. One person said it was the best whiskey they've ever had in the club. So you may agree, you may disagree, but it was good to hear. As you may have known, we did release just some special releases. We did release our E.H. Taylor single barrel last month, or this month, last week, for those members who have been in the club for a year or longer. So if you're in the club for a year or longer and you didn't get access to that, or you didn't check if your restaurant had any product left, we still have some bottles out there, but I know that most places are sold out. And then I emailed them earlier today, but I'm still waiting to hear on some of the other limited releases this year. I know a lot of people have been asking about the Stag Junior release, and I'm hoping to get more information and hoping that will be released probably long shot July. I'm hoping for August, but again, I'm at the will of the distribution gods, and sometimes they don't like to play friendly. So, but anyways, those are our announcements. As always, we hope that you'll come join us in the restaurants and utilize your 15% off discount, your priority seating perks, and all the other great stuff in our club. I do want to say that if you want to get notified when we go live on YouTube, just go ahead and hit that bell icon and sign up to be notified when we're going live or when we're planning on going live. But we do send out the emails the week prior on the date we're going live, and then the day of, we will send out another email reminding that we're going to go live. And we always give away a lot of great prizes on these calls. Speaking of prizes, tonight we are giving away two amazing prizes. We are going to be giving first place prize is going to get a Remus Repeal Reserve Series 9 bourbon, and second place prize is going to get a Remus Experimental Release number 2. If you did watch the Facebook or the Instagram teaser earlier today, we said it was experimental number 1, but it actually is experimental number 2. So I apologize for that error. But yeah, that's it. We're excited to talk all things Remus. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ian Sturzman, who's the master distiller of Ross and Squibb Distillery. And welcome to the call.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Trevor. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Ian's coming to us live from Nashville, I believe. Is that's what you said?
I'm in Tennessee, so I'm
Okay.
actually on a little family vacation down in Tennessee in the mountains.
Okay.
So the Airbnb we're staying at has Wi-Fi. I hope it's good Wi-Fi. I hope we don't have any technical problems, but so far so good.
Awesome. Well, thank you for making the time on your vacation. That's very, very nice. We greatly appreciate it. So please tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about your history with Ross and Squibb, where you started, how you ended up becoming the master distiller.
Yeah, so I started in this business about 14 years ago, or 13, 14 years ago with MGP or Ross and Squibb. I started off as a shift manager. So I was actually working as a process engineer at a paper mill in Chillicothe, Ohio. And a recruiter called me up about this distillery I'd never heard of, MGP, outside of Cincinnati in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. And I was working at a paper mill. And I thought, you know what, making whiskey sounds way better than making paper. So I packed up and moved my things to Cincinnati and started as a shift manager, kind of managing the night shift mostly at the distillery. So on the night shift, about six operators and a supervisor run the whole place. It's a big place. It's almost a mile from north to south. So you learn real quick on nights. There's really you don't want to wake anybody up in the middle of the night. So you figure out how everything works real quick on nights. I did that for a little over a year, and then I was process engineer for a little over a year. And then at the time, our master distiller was a guy named Greg Metz. He was a longtime industry vet.
Yeah, we know Greg.
He'd been at the distillery 30 plus years, and behind him, there wasn't a ton of technical expertise. So they created a role for myself and another gentleman who's now the master distiller at Barton, 1792 for Sazerac, where we moved around the distillery, few years at a time, managed each area in the distillery for a few years at a time. So I managed our boiler house, dryer house for a few years. I moved over to fermentation yeast prop for a few years, and then I ended with our mashing and whiskey distillation for a few years. And then Greg retired, and I was right time, right place. I was the only person left, so they had to pick me. And now I'm kind of in a little bit of a dream role, but I kind of fell into it. Pretty lucky with just a recruiter calling me, not really seeking it out.
Nice. Yeah, we've had Greg on the call before, and we've had Ross from 1792 on the call before. So
awesome.
Some good company you've kept. Those are some good guys. So is the Ross that's not the Rawson Squib, is it?
No.
Okay, I was gonna say
no.
Yeah. So good segue.
Yeah.
Tell
So
us
the
a little bit about
Rawson Squib is for the Rawson Squib is for the pre-prohibition history of our distillery. So we kind of break our history up into pre-prohibition, post-prohibition. Pre-prohibition, our distillery was the Rossville Union Distillery and the Squib Distillery, and they shared a border. And post-prohibition, the Rossville Distillery would burn down in 1933. Seagram's would come in and kind of rebuild everything in the distillery. And then the Squib portion of the distillery would become Shenley, and it would become the old Quaker Distillery. That distillery shut down in the 80s. We use those old Shenley rick houses for maturation, but we do all the distilling now on the Seagram's portion of the distillery. So that's where the Rawson Squib comes in. And then I'll kind of go through how like the MGP and Remus and Rawson Squib all connect too, because we've done our best job at confusing the hell out of everybody. All that.
Myself included.
Yeah, I know. And the Luxco too. So we have about 10 different names, and each week we pick a new one to go by. But MGP is the overarching company. Luxco is our branded spirits division. The Rawson Squib Distillery is the distillery you think of when you think of MGP. It's the big Indiana distillery. And then Remus is our kind of in-house bourbon that we do. And we acquired Luxco probably 5 years ago now. So that's when we changed the name of the distillery from MGP of Indiana to Rawson Squib, because, we had, with that acquisition, we picked up Limestone Branch Distillery down in Kentucky, Lux Row Distillery down in Bardstown, Kentucky, and Distillador Gonzalez as well, or Distillador Lux Gonzalez. So, it just
Penelope under the same.
And then a few years ago, we acquired Penelope as well. Yeah. So kind of all under the MGP Luxco umbrella now, but that's kind of how it all fits together.
Awesome. And let's go a little bit into the history of Remus. Can you tell us about the Remus name and George Remus and, the bootlegging and how that brand kind of started and what's the inspiration behind it?
Yeah, so we actually didn't start the brand. The brand was started by a couple guys in Cincinnati. Man, probably about 12 years ago now. And we acquired it from them in its infancy. They were buying whiskey from us, and then we acquired them. But the brand is based on George Remus, who was bootlegger during Prohibition. He was a pretty interesting guy, and his history ties into our distillery because the Squibb distillery was one of the distilleries he owned during Prohibition. He actually purchased, it was barrels from the Squibb distillery that eventually got him caught and sent to prison. But yeah, his history. He grew up in Chicago. He was son of German immigrants. And growing up, he worked for his uncle's pharmacy. And by the time he was 18 years old, he put himself through pharmacy school, bought the pharmacy from his uncle, and he got kind of bored as a teenage pharmacist, so he decided to become a trial attorney as well. And by the age of 21, he had passed the bar in Illinois and become a trial attorney. And early on in Prohibition, he started representing a lot of bootleggers. He thought these guys were just dumb hillbillies, but they're making a ton of money. So he decided he could do it better, and he moved down to Cincinnati, and he started buying up distilleries and buying up pharmacies, and he would get permits to pull whiskey out of his distillery under medicinal use, and he would sell that legally at his pharmacies. But he would also get those permits to pull medicinal whiskey out, and then have his own people rob his own trucks as they left the distillery, bootleg that whiskey out, and then get more permits because the whiskey was stolen. So pretty interesting guy.
How many times did you do that before you got caught?
A lot. He was the biggest. He was the biggest by volume bootlegger there was during Prohibition. So
That's crazy. Yeah, that's interesting. So he was he on the surface it was legit, but he was just doing some shady shit on the
yeah,
back
he was
end.
like half legit. Yeah, half legit.
So you said you worked your way through pretty much every production role or a lot of production roles at Ross and Squibb before coming the master distiller. Guess two-part question. Can you tell me again how long you've been the master distiller for Ross and Squibb? And then what was one job that you had earlier on in your career with Ross and Squibb that think prepared you the most for your current role?
All right. Yeah, so I've been master distiller since 2019, I believe. But it wasn't until like 2021 that I kind of got like full creative control and started doing the blending and working on our own brands. Before that, I was just more on the engineering side. Um, I would say the role that helped me the most was probably just back when I was a night shift manager. I mean, that was probably when the learning curve was the steepest. I mean, you got to learn everything real fast then, and then I would say my time spent over the cooker too, the mashing and the whiskey distillation was probably where I felt I had the biggest impact on the quality of the whiskey we were putting out in terms of the rotations I did. So probably those two roles.
Awesome. So Ross and Squibb obviously is in Lawrenceburg. I think
Mhm.
when most people think of Kentucky, a lot of people usually think of Frankfurt, Louisville, um, but Lawrenceburg as well. What do you think makes Lawrenceburg special about the whiskey that is produced there versus maybe some other larger cities in Kentucky that are also famous for their whiskey?
So we're in Lawrenceburg, Indiana.
Oh, that's right.
Lawrenceburg,
Sorry, that's right.
Kentucky.
My apologies. Sorry. Yes.
Lawrenceburg, Kentucky is also famous for
Yeah,
whiskey.
yeah.
But Lawrenceburg, Indiana is probably at one time maybe more famous than any of the um, cities in
Yeah, it was
Kentucky.
known as the Whiskey City at one point, right?
Yes, yeah. I mean, I think
I'm gonna get roasted in the comments now because I wrote down the wrong freaking thing.
so. I believe the first European settlers showed up to Lawrenceburg, Indiana, in like 1802 or 1804, And by 1809, the first commercial distillery was there. So people showed up, looked around, said, "This is a pretty good place to make whiskey." Um, and then, at one time when the Shenley and Seagram's distilleries were both operating there, I mean, there was two of the biggest distilleries in the country, sharing a property line. So there's a lot of distilling history in Lawrenceburg. It's the same old kind of water story. We sit on top of the Great Miami River, Buried Valley Aquifer. It's an excellent source of water, especially for fermentation. The mineral content, the nutrients in it are very good for fermentation, and it's very reliable source. I mean, we pull about 8.5 million gallons of water out of the ground every day. We don't touch the water table, so. Another really nice thing about that water is it's because of the depth of the aquifer, it's 56 degrees all year round. So it's just a really good source of water, and that was probably um, why that they decided to put the distillery there.
Awesome. So the narrative around kind of MGP sourced whiskey is obviously shifted in the past few years. At one time there was this kind of like negative perception of sourced whiskey, but I feel like now um, a lot of people are like seeking out, and the past few years, sourcing whiskey out of Lawrenceburg has been a hot commodity. Like, can you talk me through what your perception is of how that narrative has kind of changed?
Yeah, I mean, we were providing whiskey, and that's still our main business, right? I mean, our main business in Lawrenceburg is contract distillation. We're up over 1,000 customers now that buy whiskey from us. Um, and so that's, well over 1,000 brands on the shelf. You're talking the big multinationals all the way to little mom and pop distilleries. And I think, early on, probably, when I first started at the distillery, not a lot of people knew who MGP was. Not a lot of people talked about sourcing whiskey. And then I think, right around that time, you're talking like 2013, 2014, a couple of the really popular um, non-distilling producers started being really transparent about where they were getting their whiskey. I mean, people were figuring it out anyway, right? They're like, where's this really good 8-10 year old whiskey coming from this 6-month-old distillery? And a lot of the NDPs decided to kind of be real transparent about it. And then I think our reputation started to grow. I think there some people, like, I think it was kind of a narrative of people that wanted to sound like they were in the know. A lot of people be like, "Oh, that's just another MGP," but people that are like truly in the know were like, know that we're one of the heritage producers that makes some of the best whiskey in the world. And I think that more people think that way now than the other. So
Yeah, no, I agree. Let's go back to the kind of the Remus story. I mean, you shared this information about him, kind of doing things legit, but also doing some shady stuff on the back end. Is there any like, what's like the craziest story that you've heard about any of his bootlegging kind of escapades or adventures? Is there like a particular story that you think would be interesting for our members to hear?
I mean, there's a lot of very interesting stories. I mean, the one that we like to talk about is, he when he got money, he threw these like wildly extravagant parties. So there's an article in the Cincinnati Enquirer about this New Year's Eve party where every man in attendance had a diamond stick pin at their placemat for dinner. Women were looking around like, what do we get? And the servants came around with little wood boxes, gave every woman in attendance to this party a little wood box. They opened it up, and it was keys to a new car. And the servants had lined the driveway with new cars. Um, and the legend is, that he met F. Scott Fitzgerald in the basement of the Seelbach Hotel, and they became buddies. And it's very likely that Jay Gatsby and the Great Gatsby is at least somewhat based on George Remus. And And
Hence
then
the Gatsby Reserve, right? The Remus release, yeah.
yes, and it's amazing there's not a movie about the guy, because there's a million. He had a very crazy life. He wasn't necessarily like the best guy in the world, but he came up with the um, temporary insanity defense, which he used for one of his clients, and it didn't work. But then later, when he was sent to prison, the federal agent that was responsible for sending him to prison seduced his wife while he was in prison and stole pretty much everything he had through his wife. And most of this unbeknownst to him until he got out of prison. So there wasn't there was some bad blood once he was out of prison, and he ended up shooting his wife in broad daylight in a very popular park, Eden Park in Cincinnati. And he used the temporary insanity defense again for himself, and it actually worked. And he was let off. Didn't do much time at all for that through the temporary insanity plea.
Oh, yeah, well, that's pretty crazy. And
Um,
his wife died?
yes, yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Well, then probably not not a very good guy then,
No,
to your
no,
point.
yeah.
Um, so for obviously you're trying how do you decide what goes towards when you're looking at barrels? Like, is there a certain flavor profile that gets tagged for Remus, or like what is like how do you determine what goes into the Remus brand versus the other brands?
So it's kind of a multi-prong approach. So first we evaluate every distillate, that product tank of distillate we make every morning. So every morning, one of the first things we do, we in our sensory lab, we have this big Lazy Susan table, and our sensory panel will look at all of the distillates we made the previous day. And we'll compare those blind to standards we have for each different mash bill. And when we're doing that, in that process, I'll start kind of cherry picking some of the distillates for our own brands. So we'll say, hey, this we're going to put away for our own brands. But then as it ages, we will begin to evaluate how batches are aging year over year in our barrel surveys. And again, we'll look at, okay, what do we want to use for, Remus 94? What do we want to age up for Repeal, or age up even further for Gatsby? Or what do we have aging in distilling solutions that we want to swap out with what we're aging for brands? So it's kind of a multi-prong approach. We do a lot of sensory. I mean, you can imagine how many barrels we have in storage. So and our brands are still pretty small, right? So we're in a unique position where we can probably be more picky than probably anybody else in the industry, just because other large heritage distilleries like us have large heritage brands that require a lot of barrels. Our brands are still kind of fledgling and growing, and we can be really picky about the barrels we're putting into them.
Awesome. Are you guys using, is it all the same yeast strain, or is it different yeast strains for different brands?
So we almost exclusively use the V yeast strain, which is Old Seagram's yeast strain. Probably familiar with it if you're familiar with like the Four Roses mash bill codes. It's Old Seagram's codes, so we use the same ones. Their OESV would be our LESV, first letters location code. So we're Lawrenceburg, Indiana. We have the L. They're Lawrenceburg, Kentucky, but the L was taken, so they're O. And then the second letter, percentages of grains. Third letter, distillation method. Fourth letter is yeast. When we went our separate ways after Seagram's, Four Roses does a lot more with the 5 different Seagram's yeast strains. we almost exclusively use the VE strain, but we do about 40 different grain mash bills. So almost exclusively use the VE strain, but there we do some stuff with other yeasts as well.
Awesome. So I think if I remember correctly, the barrels used for this were sourced from the top floor of the sixth floor of Rickhouse N. Can you tell us a little bit about that particular rick house, and do a lot of Remus barrels come from that? Do all Remus barrels come from that? And talk to us about these particular coming from the top layer of that rick house.
Yeah, so not all Remus barrels come from a specific rick house. We have a lot of different maturation environments. We have tilt up concrete, we have metal clad, we have concrete and steel and brick. We have just about every maturation environment you can think of. We have offsite storage as well in Williamstown, Kentucky, and Sunman, Indiana, and Jennings County, Indiana. So we're storing barrels in a lot of different ways. But N is one of the original Seagrams. So it is a 6-story steel and concrete frame construction with 4 lathes of brick veneer. So if there's ever any kind of natural disaster, you want to be in one of these rick houses. They're made pretty crazy. You can never build a building like that today. But they're a little unique aging environment to us because it's one of the ones along Tanner's Creek, which runs into the Ohio River about a half mile from where the rick house is. And most of the Kentucky style ricks are, the ricks are actually the structure of the building, and they build a shell around it, and it's just floor to ceiling. With our rick houses, they're 6 stories tall, and they go 6 ricks high a story. And this was from the 6th high on the 6th floor. So it was literally the top row of barrels in the rick house. And, you're going to have a little bit of different maturation environment with that kind of concrete steel construction floored off. It mitigates the effects of the seasons a little bit. When it's going to stay warm in there pretty much all winter, never really gets real cold during the winter, and it doesn't really heat up real hot until late summer. So kind of mitigates the impacts of the seasons a little bit, but I would say that our original Seagram's rick houses are definitely some of my favorites. So.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I don't remember what the other blends were that they sent me, but obviously this is the one I like the best. So
yeah.
I was really happy with how I have my the original little sample bottle that you guys sent me. Obviously I liked it a lot because there's not a lot left. But look at that. All right. That's what you're tasting too. I love it. So yeah, let's get into the tasting portion. As always, we encourage our members, if you're watching live, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, go ahead and throw your comments into the chat if you are tasting the whiskey. We are not tasting a single barrel tonight, so everyone is tasting the same product. This is the Remus Distillers Vault 11-year Eureka Whiskey Club, 116.1 proof. So I have my tasting notes that everyone got on the cards that you get every month. So I'm tasting it live now. When I put these tasting notes together, I was tasting my original sample, and I'm tasting a fairly fresh cracked bottle. I cracked it last night. So obviously going to be a little bit different than tasting the sample that you gave me, but I get like a lot of like new leather on the nose. The tasting I put was new cowboy boots. I remember like distinctly that smell when I was a kid going into like the store, getting a new pair of cowboy boots. It kind of just like hits you in the face. So like new leather, not worn leather. Cinnamon. Obviously we're getting some oak here on the nose. Vanilla, toffee, flavor profile. Today I'm actually getting some stone fruit, which is like some dark stone fruit, but I still get that like nuttiness, pecans. I put honey praline pecans, toffee, vanilla, a little bit of tobacco on the the end, and then that leather kind of that kind of tannic aspect of like leather kind of lingers on towards the end. So um Ian, you're the master. Am I completely off, or tell me
Uh,
what you're tasting as well.
completely nailed it. No, I definitely agree. The leather, I like the new cowboy boots. It's a good tasting note. I like that.
I always try
Um,
to like, you can say new leather, you can say new
yeah,
cowboy boots.
yeah. No, I agree with that. The tobacco on the back end, I definitely agree with. The Did you say praline pecans
I
or
did, yeah.
yeah, I that's another one I'm definitely getting. Um, but yeah, no, I really like this blend. It's very kind of stereotypical of what like so it's the LBSV mash bill, the 36% rye. It's very stereotypical of what good 10-year plus LBSV should be like.
I think our members are being a little bit shy today. I don't really. I see Ken Allard, Mellow Burn, Smooth, some almond. So feel free to. I'm gonna look. I'm gonna monitor the chat a little bit while I ask Ian a couple more questions. Um, and Ian, that's my older brother's name, by the way. So great name. Um, but I'm gonna ask Ian a couple more questions, and then we'll see if anybody else chimes in with their tasting notes in the chat. Um, so when you're tasting mature barrels, this is an 11-year-old barrel. Are there any certain flavors? We talked about some flavors we get from this, and maybe one of those is in this blend. But are there any flavors that you kind of stop and say like, this one's special? This is a great barrel.
I mean, I think it depends on the mash bill. Um, I think for our 95.5 rye or rye whiskey, which is probably I'm a big rye whiskey guy. That mint and dill really comes out. In those higher age statements, the 7+ years. And I'm a big fan of those. It's kind of polarizing, but I blend for myself and hope other people like it. I would say in the 21% rye, kind of like that Luden cough drop comes out, that cherry kind of Luden cough drop note comes out in some of the older barrels that I really enjoy. And in the 36% rye, sometimes that cherry cola comes out, sometimes that like real heavy leather tobacco comes out. But every batch is different. Every barrel is going to be different. So I'm not necessarily looking for one note, but I think those are kind of our signature notes for our main mash bills.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely. You said that kind of cough droppy cherry kind of thing. Now I'm getting that a little bit, but. All right, cool. Sorry, just going through my notes. All right, a couple more questions, then we're going to get into our song choices for the month, and then our questions from the audience. So during the aging process, is there ever like the only thing I can think of is like when you're growing up, at least I did. I don't know about everybody, but you go through like an ugly phase. Um, is there like a specific barrels you've ever seen kind of go through an ugly phase, but then come out and have like a glow up towards the end of the aging process? Like this is an 11-year. Like if you tasted this whiskey at, I don't know, 7, 8 years, like is there ever like barrels that you have been like, whoa, that does not taste good. Maybe we give it a little bit more time. And like, do you find that is that ugly phase happen around a certain time frame, or is it just really depend on the environment and the aging of the barrel?
It really depends on the specific batch, the specific barrel. Every barrel peaks at a different time, and you definitely see that kind of ugly phase with a lot. The barrels that are gonna be best at really high age statements are oftentimes high acid, high congener barrels that are going to be kind of rough at young age statements. And sometimes you get some barrels that are really incredible younger, and they actually get worse. not even at the really high age statements sometimes. There was a few years ago, one of our youngest single barrel options we ever put in our single barrel program was a 4-year 21% rye batch that got picked with a pretty good frequency. It was really, really good at 4 years old. And I recently went back to that batch at 7 years old thinking like, this is going to be great. And I think it was better at 4. So, that's not typical, but that happens. I mean, every barrel is going to peak at a different point. Every batch is going to peak at a different point. So that's what makes my job really difficult when it comes to the blending side.
Awesome. A couple more questions, and then we'll get into the songs. If you could go back in time and go to one of Remus's parties, like what's one whiskey that you're making today that you'd want him to try?
Oh man, I mean,
the Gatsby might be
this
the
is like
obvious
time
choice, but
machine. It would definitely be the Gatsby because it would be like, hey, this is kind of based on you later. I don't know. I don't think I'd fit in at his parties. But yeah, no, definitely the 2025 Gatsby is probably my favorite bourbon we've released. Probably the 2025 Gatsby, yeah, would be one definitely. But I'm a rye whiskey guy, so I might bring him a rye.
Nice. And then is there like there's all these kind of like unspoken rules of the whiskey industry, and people have their opinions. Is there a whiskey rule that you secretly disagree with?
Oh, like all of them. I mean, so I'm an engineer. I'm very data driven. I certainly embrace the art of blending, but so many of the the kind of things that have been passed down through the generations, especially about maturation. Some of the things that have been like talked into fact about maturation, I strongly disagree with. I think what people do when they explain what happens in the barrel a lot is they kind of say what should happen. Like, this is the science and this is what should happen. But what actually happens in the barrel, and we know a lot of the science. I mean, you have your kind of your additive, you're extracting the solubles out of the barrel. Your a lot of your organic acids are being esterified, becoming through esterification reactions. That's where you get your esters, your fruity notes, your charcoal, your char on the barrel actually kind of acts like a charcoal filter. A lot of people think that's what gives the whiskey its color, but your Brita filter doesn't make your water brown, right? The char actually is subtractive. It actually gets it filters out some of the off notes. So we know generally, the science that happens in the barrel, but a lot of the, people talk about the seasons and how it heats up and pushes the whiskey in the barrel and then it cools down or pushes the whiskey out of the barrel and all that and like some of that stuff's true. I mean, when during the winter, the whiskey is going to be much more, it's going to take in much more oxygen. Oxygen is much more soluble when it's cold. And then when it heats up, that's going to speed up the oxidation reactions. But so much of it is just based on what should happen and not actual observation of what does happen, because actual observation of what does happen is so difficult because you have your instrument is a human instrument. You're going by taste and aroma. And it's so hard to keep that human instrument calibrated over decades. You're aging things for, 10 years, 11 years, 15, 20 years. And to calibrate that human instrument over different humans, over different time periods, is such a difficult thing to do that most of what you hear is people's experiences, not real data, right? You hear, oh, well, the last master blender or master distiller, his favorite couple of batches were from C. Rick House fifth floor. So now C. Rick House fifth floor is the honey hole, and it makes special barrels, right? But is that actually repeatable over time and time again? Is that a data driven thing, or is it just happen to be that some guy's favorite couple batches came from this place? And most of the time, it's some man or woman's favorite batches came from this place, so now this place is special. So we try and be as data driven as possible. Our sensory program, I think, is up there with the best in the industry, but it's still not perfect, and it's never gonna be. We do GC mass spec on all of our finished distillates, but nobody's ever been able to look at a chromatograph and tell you what a whiskey tastes like. So you're always going to have the human element there, and it's not a perfect science.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate the insight. We're going to get into the questions from the audience. So if you haven't asked a question, go ahead and put it in the comments on Facebook or YouTube. We'll try to get to it. Really quickly, I want to talk about your song selections. We have on Spotify, we have our Eureka Whiskey Club playlist. We add songs to it every month, chosen by our guests. So, Ian, you chose Hold On by Alabama Shakes and 1979 by Smashing Pumpkins. You want to tell us a little bit about those songs and why you chose them, other than that you like them?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be really lame here. I love music. I like listening to music, but I'm not like super into music. I don't know a lot about it. So I've literally just listened to a bunch of songs, and that's how I picked on the Alabama Shake song. I just thought it worked well with the whiskey, and that is literally why I picked it. And I grew up in the 90s. I was a big Smashing Pumpkins fan, and that's pretty much why I picked that.
Hey, no, that's great. I mean, sometimes we don't need
Yeah.
you like the music and you like drinking whiskey while
Mhm.
listening to it. So
Yeah.
that's the whole purpose of the playlist, is great music to drink whiskey to. So we appreciate you kind of participating in that little fun exercise. So I'm going to dive in. I'm going to be going on and off camera here because I got to look at my computer. But I'm going to start asking questions from the audience. Daniel Dale says, amazing pick this month. If this whiskey were aged another 3 to 5 years, what flavors would you expect to become more robust and which might begin to fade?
Okay. That is tough, but I would not age this whiskey another 3 to 5 years, because it's already got some of those like darker barrel notes. I mean, it's not tannic by any stretch of the imagination, but it's got that leather, that tobacco, those kind of darker barrel notes. And I would say in another 3 years, it's probably going to pick up some pretty heavy tannins, going to be pretty drying. And that's probably what it's going to develop into. I don't think it's going to develop kind of more interesting character. So I think this, in this batch, I would say that it's kind of at its peak right now. So
Nice. Scott McLemore asks, with your engineering background, do you ever have a conflict in balancing the science of distillation with the feel/art?
yeah, I mean the science part, it's tough because as engineers, we want consistency, 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 right? And in this industry, you're never going to get it. I mean, every barrel is different. You can have, there's several species of American oak. You can have the same species of American oak in the same forest and have, up to 20% different levels of lignans and tannins in that wood. So you take trees from sometimes all over the country, and no barrel is ever going to be the same. So, the whiskey's never going to be the same. So we do as much as we can to be consistent about the process, but the process is inherently inconsistent. And, big old distilleries like us, most of our distillery was rebuilt in the 30s. We don't have sterile piping, and we don't want sterile piping. There's each distillery kind of has its signature because of those local bacteria and local yeast, local microorganisms kind of give each distillery its kind of unique signature. And so we're always working with some kind of baseline level of infection. And again, that contributes to the inconsistency of the product we're making. But I think it makes it cool from a consumer perspective, because every barrel is different and you're always chasing, that perfect barrel. You're always wondering what you're going to get. Right. So it's frustrating from an engineering standpoint, especially because, like I said earlier, you have an imperfect instrument is the measurement of success, which is, our tastes and our our olfactory senses. But no, it's awesome. And I love the industry. I love whiskey, so I wouldn't want to be manufacturing anything else.
Jason C asks, there's an apparent downturn in the market right now. So are you seeing a lot of struggles with the NDPs sourcing Ross and Squibb distillate?
Yeah, the industry's tough right now. But some of our customers are doing really well. Some may not be doing as well, but it's not even that big of a downturn on consumption. It's mostly an oversupply issue. So yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of brands out there doing really well. Some are struggling. I think it just right now you got to be putting out really good whiskey to succeed. You got to be setting yourself apart. I think consumers are looking for value. So if you're putting out a good whiskey at a good value, your brand's probably still growing. So
awesome. Now, I don't know if you remember anything about the 8 individual barrels that made up this blend, but if we were to taste these 8 barrels individually, this question comes from Clay Cooper. If we tasted 8 barrels that made up this blend, what would surprise us most about the finished whiskey?
I don't know. That's a tough question. I mean, anytime you're blending, the goal is always, that the sum of the blend is greater than its individual parts, right? So I think you could probably say that about these 8 barrels. The 8 barrels all came from the same batch in this case. So they would have been, somewhat similar, but each barrel was certainly unique. But really happy with the way the blend came out. So
yeah,
I don't know that you would have been shocked by anything, but
nice. Matthew Archer asks, since Lawrenceburg, Indiana is underlain by karst, I don't know what that means. Sorry, Matt. I'm assuming that's some sort of organic material or soil, but underlain by karst, which helps out with the mineral content of the water. Have you experienced any sinkholes on the distillery grounds?
No, we have not really. Well, no, I don't think we've had any natural sinkholes. No, I think all of the sinkholes we've had have been created by leaking firewater lines underground.
Do you know what
I don't
karst
think we've had
is?
any
Matt will
natural
have to enlighten me.
sinkholes. Yeah, no, we haven't.
But do you know what karst is or no?
Oh, karst. I'm actually not super familiar with karst. Is that a
Matt, you'll have to educate us.
kind
Sorry.
of form of sediment?
Yeah, I don't know. All right. Vincent Zuniga asks, has anyone created books that align with these stories that could be use to pair with these bottles? I'm assuming he's talking about the Remus stories.
Yeah, so there are some books about George Remus. There's the King of the Bootleggers and the Ghosts of Eden Park are two pretty good books about George Remus, and they're pretty interesting reads.
What was it? King of the Bootleggers and what?
And the Ghosts of Eden Park.
Oh, okay, awesome. I'll check it out. Let's see here. This one's kind of just, I always find these quite, because I think a lot of, well, at least I know a lot of people that I know think all I do is drink all day, which I do drink. It's part of the job, but there's also other things. So Paula Prestia says, how many tastings do you do in a day on average, I guess?
Oh, that it depends. But I try to keep it under like 25. Like I could do like, 12 or 13 in the morning, 12 or 13 in the afternoon, maybe more like 15 in the morning, 15 in the afternoon. But I try not to do much more than that, because much more than that, and you really kind of lose the nuance of what you're tasting. Your palate.
Yeah, probably it kills your palate. Yeah.
Yeah.
I went to Kentucky last month, and I think I selected like 20 something barrels in a day. So I probably did around 25 tastings or somewhere around there. And people are like, how are you not hammered? I'm like, I'm only taking like tiny sips of like each sample. Like, it's not like I'm tasting a full glass of whiskey every time I'm choosing a barrel. But but pour us, right? We have to pour us. We have to drink whiskey, and everyone feels bad for us, I'm sure.
I'm typically spitting at work. I'm not.
Yeah, I'm sure. I was not. Let's see here. Melissa Graining asked, do NDPs ever choose something but ask you to keep it to an age in the barrels longer before they bottle it? Before you bottle it, I guess.
Yeah, so people can buy whiskey from us in a lot of different ways. So, a lot of people buy whiskey from us. So they'll basically put in an order for new fill, right? So we will make the mash bill they want, and we'll put it in the barrel, and they will buy that basically as it gets barreled. So they own those barrels, and then we store those barrels for them, and we can send them samples, and when they can determine when it's ready. They can also buy aged whiskey from us that is available, and then we can further store it for them, or they can dump the barrels. And yeah, sometimes people buy kind of older age statement whiskey from us that's ready to pull, and they might pull it right away. But yeah, there's a lot of kind of different ways, and a lot of times we don't store everything on site either. So sometimes a customer might take something that's been stored on our site for a few years, and then we'll ship them the barrels, and they'll store it somewhere else for a few years. So a lot of different ways people can buy whiskey from us, and then determine when it's ready for them.
Awesome. All right, I got a couple more here. Let's see. Rachel Conley asks, with the 11-year at 36% rye, which is lower than the 9-year vault, was that a deliberate decision to let the oak and time drive the flavor rather than the grain?
So, so we have done some 9-year distillers vaults before. And it's really just dependent on the batch, right? So some batches really shine earlier than others. This batch of 11-year-old barrels, like I said, I thought it was, it kind of reached its peak maturation. Didn't really want it to go further. And we made some of these barrels available for the Distillers Vault program. We also do some like kind of interesting mash bills for the Distillers Vault program. So we do 100% malted rye, which the oldest we have of that is 7 years. So that's what is available. And then we also do a 49% rye bourbon, and the oldest we have of that is 9 years. So it just kind of depends on what I want to put in the program in a given year. Try and make it interesting, and pick whiskey that's kind of at its prime. And sometimes that's not always the same, age statement.
Awesome. All right, one more question, and then we'll pick the winners for tonight. So Shane Call says, "What part of the distilling process requires the most intuition rather than science?"
It's mostly science. The distillation is. So I mean, the blending, the picking barrels, the blending, that requires a lot of intuition. The distillation is mostly science. I guess where the intuition comes in is if we do any kind of distillation trial, the result of that trial is going to be sensory, right? So
What does that make,
we'll
making the
have that
cuts?
sensory aspect. What?
Is that when it comes to like making the cuts between heads, hearts, and tails as far as sensory goes?
Yeah, I mean that's more on on a pot still. On a continuous still, the way most big heritage distilleries make whiskey. Um,
It's
you
all
kind of
automated.
you kind of have your heads cut and your tails cut, but it's a little different. Like you're not making cuts. On a continuous still, your heads cut is kind of the temperature you're running your last condenser at, and your tails cut is really your steam to feed ratio, of the still. So how much steam are you putting in that still versus how much water and alcohol? And we use some anchor points for that stuff. Basically, we'll anchor the amount of ethanol coming out of the bottom of the still. That is kind of our control point to determine our feed to steam ratio, and then we'll control the condensing water to a certain temperature for our vent condensers. But also, we'll take a look at the GC data for the line samples, and if total heads are high, we'll bump that temperature up a little bit. And we also, we'll go by sensory as well. So if the sensory of the line sample is off, there's some things we can do to clean it up. There's some things we can do to make it higher congener. But it's mostly all science.
Spoken like a true engineer.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I can run through the questions again. I don't know if you had remembered a couple that stood out to you, but if you need a recap, I'm happy to provide that for you.
So I'm choosing the questions, the best ones?
No. Yeah. Well, I can
Okay.
recap them. I can recap them for you, or if you knew a couple that stood out, but there were quite a few. So we had the question about if the whiskey aged for another 3 to 5 years. We had the question about balancing science of distillation versus the art. We had the question about the NDPs, kind of the slowdown in the market. We had the question about if you tasted the 8 barrels, what would surprise you the most about the finished whiskey. We had the question about the karst, which I looked up, and karst is a distinct type of landscape formed by the dissolution of soluble bedrock, primarily carbonate rocks like limestone and dolomite. So if you're interested, I had to know. I had to look it up. And then we had the question about how much do you taste in a day. We had the question about the 9-year vaults and the flavor of the grain rather than the oak over time. We had the question about NDPs asking you to let it age longer before they bottle it. And then I believe we had the question about the last question was about the intuition versus science in distilling.
All right. I like the question about the 9-year vault because because it sounds like Rachel has gotten multiple distillers vaults, so I like that.
Okay, nice.
And the question about the sinkholes, I haven't got that one before, so that's
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to go with the sinkholes question for my number one, because I had to look something up I didn't know about, and it kind of made me learn a little bit more about Indiana and where you guys make whiskey. So Matthew Archer will go ahead and get you that bottle of the Reserve Series, or the Reserve Series 9, and then Rachel Conley will get you that bottle. You had the question about the 9-year. We'll get you that question of the Experimental Series number 2. So we'll be reaching out to you to get those addresses and send you that whiskey. Ian, thank you so much. We appreciate your time, especially while you're on vacation. That's very kind of you. We're very happy to get this to our 1,200 members this month, and again, we got a lot of great feedback. So I'm going to pour a little bit more so I can give you. Oh no, I got a little bit left here. So cheers, appreciate it.
cheers.
And hope all our Whiskey Club members have a great night. Have a good one.
Thanks.